There we go. Alex.
Ah!
I don't know.
Did the
Forget.
show start? What the fuck?
Yeah, the show started.
Oh, damn it.
They used to do a countdown timer, and now they don't. And so when you hit, I've gotten better at like just sort of I'm in my gut knowing when the video stream is going to start, but it caught me by surprise there.
Yeah, it looks like they've made some changes here to some stuff. I don't really. It doesn't. Well, for one thing, they haven't made any changes to the sound effects or anything like that. So,
They haven't updated the sound library, unfortunately.
yeah, no, it's just the same and what have you. Though that gong feels like it went through an effects processor recently. Other than that, it seems like it's the same. So, whatever.
Yeah, they still haven't announced that they bought Twitch, right?
No, that is not a confirmed thing yet. That is a lot of speculation that is probably true, but they haven't said anything.
Yeah, it's still just a VentureBeat story from, at this point, a full week ago.
Yeah, there's like an eternity in tech time.
Yeah, Dean Takahashi's a guy that knows his shit, though. So
Yep.
if he says that Google's buying them, I don't really have any reason to. That stuff takes time. Remember like Apple buying Beats was rumored for like weeks before the deal finally closed. People need to get their money.
Yeah,
Contracts seem like they take a while.
I wonder who from Twitch will make a Dr. Dre like video celebrating the sale before it is officially locked in.
I don't know. This is a good
I don't
question.
even know who's at Twitch anymore now that Jared's gone. Honestly.
A PR guy with one name, Chase. That's about it.
Okay.
That's about it. How was your weekend? Or no, how was your week? No, how
How
was
was
your
my week?
yeah,
How was
how was your last weekend? Let's break it down.
I feel like we already talked about that on Monday. It was fine. It was fine. Everything was fine.
It's been 4 days. Things could have changed. You can maybe you hate.
You're
your
saying that
last
things
weekend
could
now.
have changed further in the past that already happened in the 4 days that happened after that past weekend.
Your feelings about them could have changed.
I mean, I guess, sure. They didn't, though. They're kind of the same. I don't really have anything to add to my previous weekend. I did do some stuff this week, though.
What did you do this week?
I played Crypt of the NecroDancer.
You did, which I briefly mentioned last week, and encouraged you to check it out. And then the developers behind it were kind enough to send over a whole boatload of codes, enough that I think I could probably give some out to the fine people.
That would probably be a good
Website.
call, because that game is really good, and lots of people should play it.
Yeah, went to early access officially this week, I believe on the 30th, and you and Vinny did a quick look. So I played, maybe 20 minutes, but in that 20 minutes, I already realized this was a game I'm going to spend a lot of time with, and
Yep.
it seems like the bug may have bitten you as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely scratching that same itch that Spelunky did for me for a while. And granted, I never fell into the Spelunky hole the way that you did. I really
Mhm.
liked that game. It was good, but I had no real interest in doing the daily challenges constantly. And at a certain point, I just kind of felt like I had my fill of it. This is rekindling that same feeling, that feeling of, well, I just died, but it's not going to take that long to get back to where I was. So what if I just went back and played again, and then I do that like 17 times throughout the day, and then I get nothing else done. So great work, Crypt of the NecroDancer. You're going to swallow my fucking life, aren't you?
Yeah, I haven't watched the quick look, but I have to imagine you ran into some of the issues that I did, which probably are more of a function of early access than anything else. I don't know this for sure, but when you get items and you buy stuff, you don't necessarily know what it does. You're just spending the money, assuming that, well, it must be good, but there's a bit of trial and error in that game that isn't necessary and was kind of frustrating. Obviously you could use the items enough that you just figure out what their uses were, but that seems like an unnecessary step.
I wonder if that is a function of the game, if that is just like the way they want it to be. Like, here are these items. We're not going to tell you what they are. Internet, you figure it out.
It wouldn't. That's why I say it
Yeah.
could be a function of early access, or it might not be. Like for example, in I can't Binding of Isaac. In that game, it is you grab items, and there's a reason that there are giant wiki sites that
Yep.
lay out not only what individual items do, but how individual items interact with other items and stack and blah blah blah. That stuff is not mentioned by the game, which I don't know if that's being switched in the upcoming sort of like pseudo remake that's happening on PS4 and Vita and PC. But in any case, it also could be that for this type of game, they either want you to really learn the items. I just,
Yeah.
it's, even if that's a deliberate choice, I disagree with it. Just put some text on the bottom of the screen for
Right.
5 seconds that says, this is what this item does. I don't feel like I should have to have a wiki open unless it's about something secret or nuance. I don't know. It seems like that's a UI thing that could go a long way pretty easily.
I mean, even if there was just like a little, item book or something that you could look at where it only tells you what items are once you've bought them in the main hub store, like that to me would be enough. Like, I don't necessarily need to know what an item is before I run up and purchase it because, fuck it, what do I care? But, once I have it, it would be nice to look at it and be like, okay, so that's what this does. So the next time I see it in the in-game shop, I should actually buy that or I should actually skip it. So that would be nice. I agree. But I think for an early access game, this seems remarkably complete. And I mean, it sounds like there's still a lot of placeholder art in there. This is an alpha, so there's still a fair amount of that game, I guess, to be built out. But mechanically, it feels like it's there. Like it has the basic gameplay is real simple. You're just tapping the arrow keys to move in a direction to the beat of the music. That is not a super complicated thing, but it feels really tight. And the procedurally generated stuff, the enemies, all that stuff seems like it works really, really well with that mechanic. Like it all feels like it works very surprisingly harmoniously for a game that is supposedly not finished.
And it doesn't feel overbearing, which
No.
is what I was worried about. And, again, I think went into sort of grossly misinform my opinion of the game before I had played it, was that the music and the rhythm is a component, but you don't really feel conscious of it after a couple of minutes. Like you're hyper conscious of it when you're first starting out because it's sort of the hook of the game. It's like a huge part of what makes it different. But
Right.
pretty soon, you just sort of internalize the beat and you just move on. Like then you're just playing the game and the strategies are sort of playing out. Like you're not constantly thinking like, oh, like sometimes I would tap my foot.
Mm-hmm.
To kind of like keep the beat, but that's probably just a weird tick as opposed to something you would actually need to do.
Yeah, I'll nod my head a little bit. I'll try and keep do something with my body to sort of keep the rhythm in addition to tapping on the arrows. I mean, that's something I do when I play drums too. It's just that's kind of a natural function of trying to keep a beat or keep a rhythm. That said, the one thing I do hope they work on a little bit is their calibration tools, because I kept doing it, and I kept getting these weird numbers that did not actually correspond to what the lag was when I went back and turned it all to 0. Like when I turned all the calibration stuff to 0, the game actually seemed to work just fine. Like I could tap along to the music, and it never seemed like it was really causing me any lag issues. But when I actually used their calibration tools, I would get these like high numbers, and then it would feel like I was constantly off from the music. So I don't know if that's just not finished, but
I think those could be better. Like right now, I think the way the calibration tools work is just like when an icon on the screen lights up, you hit tap a button on the keyboard, and I don't know. I felt like that could have been, I don't know, better visually communicated. I think I ended up getting like 0 audience latency and then like a 60. I don't know. Mine worked out fine.
yeah.
I didn't feel any weirdness when I was actually playing the game. But obviously, yeah, like if they're trying to account for lag either in your speakers or in your keyboard, like if you have a wireless keyboard, for example, I'd imagine there might be a slight amount of latency that would be pretty critical for a game that is timing based. But
Right.
yeah, that could be better. I don't know exactly what they would do, but it seems stuff like UI. I feel like when I've normally talked to game developers, a lot of that stuff comes together a lot later.
Yeah, and I mean, calibration tools are not the easiest thing in the world to do. I mean, what they're using is not that dissimilar from like what Rock Band uses for its stuff. It's just here's an image, here's a sound, match those two things, here's your audio and video latency. It's the same idea. So functionally, it's there. I just don't think it completely works yet. and I think that their visual cue, the heart beating thing, could be a little bit better because sometimes I felt like it was really hard to match up to that animation for some reason. I don't really know why. I have a much easier time matching the rhythms, like if I'm looking at it visually, to the hearts beating in the heart containers up at the top of the screen, or the lights on the floor when you have a combo multiplier going. Trying to follow that bottom thing for some reason just doesn't work for me.
Yeah, I love that combo meter changes
Mm-hmm.
everything about Crypt of the NecroDancer. I'm not sure if the mechanic of sort of moving to the beat and attacking to the beat would be nearly as interesting without it. So
Yep.
for people that aren't aware, like it's a roguelike. So when you die, you come out the other side with the gold and diamonds, which are like the various kinds of currency that you pick up in the game, and you have that so you can buy permanent upgrades and unlocks that will produce new items that can randomly appear in the dungeons. But you don't have any experience. You don't carry the sword or whatever you found throughout the journey, and in order to make that run more worthwhile, there is a combo that is maintained when you attack and kill enemies to the beat, and then also don't miss a beat. So that's
Yep.
the only punishment the game dishes out if you just sort of like start just rapidly tapping on the keyboard. Like you can move, but you're not going to get a combo, and so you're really encouraged to be thoughtful about when you're attacking, how you're attacking, and that's like that combo, which leads, I guess you should point out, like the combo means that you're getting better gold drops. So you're getting more gold per enemy, which means more gold per run, which means theoretically you are progressing in the larger arc of Crypt of the NecroDancer at a faster rate due to your sort of skill and strategy. And I found that like really hooked me in a really profound way, and I would get incredibly frustrated when I would just sort of errantly miss the beat, like when I'm just trying to move across the screen. Like for whatever reason, I just had a brain fart, which translated to a finger fart, and then it just.
I don't want to hear about your fingers farting. I haven't had a chance to look this up yet, and I'm not sure if it's actually available in this build yet or not. It might be. I just haven't seen it. Have you figured out how to use your own soundtracks? Because I love the Danny Baranowski soundtrack that's in there, but I would like to see what happens with my own music.
No, I have not messed around with that, but I'm curious to see how it works. The soundtrack for the game is so terrific that at least early on I saw no reason to even care about that, but I can imagine maybe once you've exhausted sort of the single player, like there is sort of an arc. There's these different sections you go through, and I imagine there'll be a final boss of some capacity. I wouldn't be surprised if after that, then it would be pretty fun to start dropping in your own music and see what, like how does that work with like a Weezer song? Like I'm curious how that stuff translates into the gameplay, especially because the levels are determined. Like you get kicked out of a level if you don't get to the exit before the end of the song.
Yeah.
So that there is sort of a time requirement there, but it's not. You just move on to the next stage. You don't get killed as a result. So I guess if I was picking my own music, well, I'll just pick Tool songs so I can hang out in those stages for as long as I want.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine I am curious to see how it handles stuff that has like weird time signatures or strange beats and that kind of stuff. Like there are songs apparently that are already in the game later on that do use like dropped beats and stuff. Like you lose every 8th beat or something which is probably going to get really really challenging at a certain point. So I would be curious to see how the game maps that stuff. But even on just like a basic like, hey, I just want to play this dance music because that would be fun. I would like to see how that works. So maybe someone in the chat can tell us how that works if that's actually in this build, because I would like to try it out this weekend.
Yeah, so Crypt of the NecroDancer, highly recommended. Even
very much so.
In the brief time that I think you and I both spent with it, but my guess is we'll probably be talking about that game as we go forward. And it's I think you briefly mentioned it, but I think it's worth reiterating is that if you're afraid, maybe afraid is the wrong word, but averse to early access or have been kind of turned off to the notion of early access, this is not one of those games you need to be afraid of. It's
No.
obviously incomplete, but you can feel really confident in your purchase because there's a lot of stuff that's already up and working and a lot of fun. And I actually think this is a kind of game, because it's a roguelike, that it could be really satisfying to watch the game come together and watch the dynamics of the game sort of alter as they figure out exactly how it works, because, enemy sets could change, level generation could change. Like, a lot of really interesting things could change. I'm not sure when they're aiming to be out, if that's a 2014 game or if that's sometime next year.
It could be. It seems like it could be this year game. I mean, again, they say they're an alpha, but it does feel like they have a lot of that game kind of in place now. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was this year.
Yeah. So, recommended. Really, I want to play more of that game, and I will probably do so this weekend.
Yeah, I feel like the early access that, like, just Vinny and I have been playing through a lot of, like, random early access games over the last couple weeks, many of which we have chosen not to film things for because a lot of that shit is barely games. So, again, I do not make this recommendation lightly. Most of early access to me has been kind of a wasteland. This is one of the few examples where I feel like this game is actually going to benefit from this because it is surprisingly well done at this stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, thumbs up. Also, I would give a thumbs up to, brief aside, Guardians of the Galaxy, which I saw last night.
Ah, you enjoyed it then.
Oh my God. James Gunn knocked it out of the park. And
awesome.
It is kind of amazing how much of a James Gunn film it is in the sort of Marvel-verse of, it's very obvious with those films that, 80% of it is conceived before it goes to shoot, and then the director is kind of just there to carry it to the finish line and bring it to life. But these are not sort of auteur Christopher Nolan style.
Sure.
Generally speaking, anyway. And Guardians of the Galaxy, man, like, just specifically speaking as someone who's been a big James Gunn fan, Super is a great movie. Slither is one of the best, like, B movies of the last 10, 15 years. I guess that movie might be more than 10 years old at this point. So
it's at least 10 years old.
I had to qualify that as I was about to say 10 years because it might be more than 10 years old. But that movie's so fantastic. And, yeah,
he wrote that Dawn of the Dead remake that Zack Snyder directed. He wrote the script for that movie. Yeah. That was one of his first non-trauma scripts, I think.
Yeah. And he managed to sneak in one really grotesque joke into the movie. One that will fly right over the heads of any kids that find themselves at the movie, because these are always kind of family-friendly affairs. But there is one that the innuendo is so incredible. I looked at my wife after it was uttered and just like, I'm genuinely surprised that made it into this movie.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've been looking forward to this one. I've enjoyed most of the Marvel movies up to this point, but I am definitely starting to feel a certain amount of fatigue with just like the regular superhero stuff that most of that stuff has been. The idea of something that is actually a little off-kilter and a little bit... I mean, the way it's been described to me is that it still feels very much like a Marvel movie. It's just suddenly Marvel grew like a really weird sense of humor, and that is... it captures the spirit of the comic in that regard. Would you say that was the case for you?
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with the Marvel comics. Like, this is my first real introduction to these characters. I paid 99 cents for this Marvel Unlimited promotion that Marvel was doing as a result of Comic-Con, where for their all-you-can-eat Netflix-style comics application on iPads and iPhones, you can indulge for a month for $1. So I ponied up. I stopped being cheap and paid $1, so I could kind of go and read some of the stuff now that I've seen the movie. But yeah, if any fears that a guy like James Gunn was going to be, I think especially after all the stuff about Edgar Wright and Ant-Man and the disappointment that has swirled around him leaving that project, maybe he made the right decision. But this is a James Gunn movie that just happens to be through the lens of a bunch of Marvel characters, and I'm not surprised that he signed on immediately to write and direct the second one. Because it's just, it feels so much like him. And it makes me so excited because, even if you aren't interested, like if you're more of a fan of Slither, James Gunn, and you're sort of perturbed by him working in comics, because of these movies and the fact that this is going to be this huge success, James Gunn gets to do whatever the fuck he wants after this. And that's what makes it's the next 10, 15 years of James Gunn post-Marvel that I am tremendously excited about, because now he's going to have budgets and name recognition in a way that he's going to make the weirdest fantasies come true. And that is truly, truly an amazing thing that I will be thankful for whenever we get that stuff well into the future.
What if, though, he uses all that clout and then he just makes 15 more live-action Scooby-Doo movies?
I forgot. That's also been the weird thing as I've been reading up on him, was realizing that he was involved with the live-action Scooby-Doo movies. But hey,
he directed them, didn't he?
He might have. But
I
hey,
think
man,
he directed the first one at least.
You got to take your jobs where they come. You know, I mean, that's what do you know? You're coming from Troma. If you get offered Scooby-Doo, maybe you take what you can get.
Have there been many other like screenwriters or directors that have come out of the Troma scene and become like mainstream popular?
Man, probably not. Not to this degree, I don't think. I mean, obviously we could be corrected on that front, but I feel like James Gunn has made the transition from, because a lot of folks that come from those beginnings never leave there. Like there's a lot of familiar names in the B-movie world. You know, the B-movies are live and well in the direct-to-video asylum sort of world, but very few of them leave. You know, and I think James Gunn has got to be, you know, I guess Sam Raimi you could claim is from that same circle, even though Evil Dead started more horror-y. I guess Peter Jackson basically comes from he doesn't come from Troma.
But he comes from a similar scene.
Yeah, I think he probably is in that same wheelhouse. If you go and watch Bad Taste, I mean, he's right there with James Gunn in terms of weird sort of violence and sexual innuendo and all those sorts of things that come from that kind of film. So I guess, yeah, Peter Jackson's probably a little bit bigger than James Gunn, but James Gunn is gunning for him.
Yeah. Someone in the chat just said, "What is Troma?" And I just realized there is probably actually a whole generation of people out there who have no idea what Troma Films is.
Oh, well, I guess the Toxic Avenger is probably the one pop culture reference. Does that even qualify as a pop culture reference anymore?
I guess. I don't know. I feel like that is something that someone from the later generation might come into contact with, but not really know where it came from or why it's a thing. Troma is a incredible studio that makes really ridiculous B movies, usually kind of like hyper gory or just really hyper like intentionally offensive type stuff. Toxic Avenger, Tromeo and Juliet is another one that I remember having a VHS copy of for some reason. God, yeah, it was someone who used to work at GameSpot worked on. Was it Poultrygeist? Was the movie that I think he wrote and and helped produce for them. So they made a lot of really weird shit. That's really all there is to Troma, is that they are a very, very strange studio run by this crazy man named Lloyd Kaufman, who you may remember from appearing in what was it, the Gunstringer. He also Me and Lloyd Kaufman were, I think, the only two people who did review quotes for that game.
Ooh.
Yeah. So
you're in good company.
I'm only 2 degrees removed at this point from Lloyd Kaufman. That's pretty great.
Yeah, that whole circle of somehow still around, because like Charles Band and Full Moon Productions are certainly on that same bandwagon.
Yeah.
I don't know who keeps them afloat. You know, I casually dip into Troma and Full Moon, but you know I'm more of a fan of old Full Moon stuff, despite my involvement with Evil Bong 3. You know, the new Puppet Master films are garbage, and Troma is also trades more on, like, there's good schlock and then there's bad schlock.
Right.
And there's not a lot of good schlock these days. I guess
no.
Sci-Fi Channel has kind of taken over that realm in the mainstream. I've never seen the Sharknado films. I don't know if I'm too cool for them, but I don't know.
I don't know, man. The sci-fi stuff feels like it's really trading on knowing irony, like, hey, look how bad this is. Like, they're just screaming it at the top of their lungs. And I
Yeah.
mean, so I watched Sharknado 2 this week just because I felt like, all right, fine, cultural event, nothing else is going on tonight. I'm just going to see what's going on here. I don't know, man. Like, there were a bunch of people talking like that movie was super, like, way better than anyone thought it would be. That it was like great. That it had all these, awesome references and cameos and shit. I thought that was the movie equivalent of like one of those BuzzFeed only '90s kids will remember articles. Like, it was just, here's all these people you sort of recognize from the early '90s. Look, Julie Brown is playing a nurse. Isn't that ridiculous? Billy Ray Cyrus is here. Hey, Will Wheaton just got his head eaten by a shark. That's entertaining, right? And I was like, no, not really. Like, none of it really felt that interesting or exciting to me. It just felt way too knowing and nudging and winking, and it just didn't work.
Yeah, I think that's my really sort of have articulated my aversion to it is it's a little too knowing, and the schlock that I really enjoy, it's not that knowing, it's not that ironic, like I guess
Needs
it
to
rubbed
be
me the wrong
earnest.
way.
It has to believe in itself on some level. It has to believe that what it's doing is worthwhile, even if it very clearly is not. And if it doesn't believe that, if it believes that what what it's doing is just being bad for the sake of being bad, that rarely turns out very well to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean so I was listening to an NPR podcast recently about like why there's no price elasticity in like movie theater tickets when the economics of like big budget movies would mean like you should probably charge more for them. Like it was explaining why that doesn't happen in movie theaters, and they actually, I don't know why, I just never thought of it. It makes sense in retrospect. Like the origin of the term B movie. Are you aware of it?
Not personally, no.
So they're called B movies because there used to be A movies and B movies, and they charged less for the B movies because they were considered lesser movies that had smaller budgets, and they were charging more for the A movies, which now we're going pretty far back at this point. I think they said this was phased out, by the 60s and 70s, but at some point they were called B movies because they were considered, like, by the theater chains, in terms of ticket prices, a lower class of film, and then it just sort of stuck as an endearing quality for movies that were kind of trying to punch above their weight. And it makes total sense when you think about it that way, and I just, for whatever reason, had never investigated why a B movie actually exists.
No, I hadn't either. That makes a lot of sense. At the same time, yeah, I feel like you said, that like B movies, that scene doesn't seem to really exist these days outside of the sci-fi originals and like the Asylum film shit. Like, yeah, there's lots of direct.
And Asylum is insulting to the concept of schlock in B movies.
I know.
They're just fucking bad. I don't want to see transmorphers. That's. Ugh.
There's nothing really very entertaining about most Asylum movies that I've seen, and I've seen more than I would care to admit. That's just crass capitalism. That's just like, hey, we're just trying to get stuff into your Netflix queue that looks like a movie you might recognize, and go with it. And they're never fun. They're never interesting. There's nothing ever entertaining about them. So, yeah, fuck that shit.
Vincent Vendetta in the chat says, James Gunn did not direct the Scooby-Doo films, but he wrote and produced both of them.
Close enough.
He's still responsible for them.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Want to talk about some news?
Yeah, I'm trying. I don't think I played anything worth talking about.
Yeah.
You
played Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians
of the Galaxy. Go see it. It's really, really good. It's the best Marvel film since Iron Man. Maybe that's due to the fact that it's not as hung up on the interconnected stuff, which is fun, but maybe a little weighty for stories. So go see it. It's really, really good. It's really funny. All the stuff I played is, I don't know if it's necessarily worth getting into. I played more Divinity Original Sin, which my wife is out of town for the next 4 days, so I think I'm going to power through the last, I think I have like maybe a third, a little more than, between a third and a half to go, and I think I can finish that this weekend. I think I will try and write a review for that next week, because I'd like to try and make the point that folks that maybe wouldn't try a Ultima or Baldur's Gate style game should think about giving this one a shot, because I'm not one of those people, and I really like this game a lot. Played more of Kim Kardashian, made it to the D list, but that will culminate in an article I'm going to write, and we'll go up on the site early next week. There's not much to get into there, and
Do you think you will get past the D list?
no,
Okay.
definitely
You've hit
not.
your limit? Okay.
Yeah, where I land on that game is it's the writing was making me play, and I'm just not getting a lot of it right now. And
Sure.
yeah, so it's kind of hit the end of the road for me. But
Fair enough.
it was worth 4 hours of mindless fun. And yeah, so yeah, well, there's a bunch of news, so we should
Let's dive into it.
talk about it. Anything that calls out to you?
Let's start with EA Access.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like this is kind of a thing. So EA has their own subscription service now, which they are going to be debuting exclusively on Xbox One for reasons we'll get into in a moment, where you will be able to subscribe for $4.99 a month to get portions of their back catalog as, I mean, I guess technically rentals, though not really, because you'll just be able to play them for as long as you keep the subscription going, and those games are up on the service. Do you have the list up of the early games? It's like Battlefield 4, Madden, FIFA,
Madden 25,
yeah,
which is last year's game. Is that last
yeah, it
year?
is last year's game.
Well, this year's game isn't out yet, right? That'll be
No, it's out at the end of August. So
yeah. So yeah, it's Battlefield 4, Madden, NFL 25, FIFA 14, and what's the fourth one? Hold
what
on.
was the fourth one?
What's the fourth one? Peggle 2.
Ah, yes.
So yeah, you get access to those. You can play them unlimited during the beta period, which seems to sort of insinuate that it's possible they could put limits on that in the future.
Right.
I'm not really sure what that means. They may not know what that means just yet. But yeah, it's $4.99 a month or $29.99, or so $5 or $30. Whether you want to pay monthly or annually, and it's exclusive to Xbox One, which we can get into that a little bit later because it seems like it's not because Microsoft partnered with EA. It's because Sony passed on it. But yeah, I mean, essentially, EA is trying to set up their own PlayStation Plus style subscription service in which the big lure will be this back catalog of games that you can gain access to, and you also get 10% discount on any digital purchase for an EA product, whether it's like buying Dragon Age Inquisition through Xbox Live, so you get 10% off of that, which is, I mean, $6. That's not insubstantial, I guess.
Oh.
I guess that's basically a little more than tax, probably, or something like that.
Yeah.
And so that applies to DLC and across the board. So if you buy a lot of DLC for, like, say, Battlefield, that's probably potentially a good deal. I haven't run the numbers on it necessarily, but and then you also get access to retail games ahead of release. So I think they said for like Dragon Age, you'll get to play it 5 days in advance, which is basically a full work week ahead of the game's actual release. And I feel like the back catalog and early access to the games you might already be buying seem like the most compelling sort of features of EA Access.
Yeah, it sounds like an interesting idea. I mean, they've toyed around with subscription services before. They did something with their sports label a couple of years back where they did a thing where you could subscribe and you would get early access to the games before they came out. I don't remember if there was any back catalog stuff involved with this stuff, but I mean, this is in keeping with their experimentation in new ways to find, new ways to charge people for stuff. This, to me, does not sound like a super compelling thing. I'm sure there are people out there who would like, to be able to play these sorts of back catalog games for cheaper, but to me, it's just like, until they announce a little bit more of a back catalog than the first 4 games they currently are listing, I'm not seeing a hell of a lot of value in it. And it doesn't sound like Sony saw a whole lot of value in it either, because they have just straight up said, yeah, we looked at it, and we don't actually want this.
My reading on that is that they view that as competition for PlayStation Plus and decided they don't want publisher-run subscription service on their platform because it's possible it could take away money from PlayStation Plus. I think that's my reading on it.
That's probably not unfair. It's interesting that Microsoft, who is also trying to do their own version of, kind of some of the PlayStation Plus service stuff, did not have that reaction to it.
Yeah, I think EA may be looking at this as, if EA is able to put together a compelling package for let's say, Battlefield fans that, you know, Xbox One has lost a little bit of ground to PS4 in terms of being the sort of preferred machine of the hardcore. So, you know, if this, you know, Battlefield and sports games are pretty big segments of markets for gamers that sort of end up sort of anchoring in one platform or the other, and it seems like Microsoft's kind of hoping that maybe this might swing them one way or the other. For me, you're absolutely right. EA Access, I don't really play Battlefield, so none of this is interesting right now. And I think a lot of that has to do with, A, it's the first year of both of these platforms, so there's just not that many EA games on Xbox One yet. You know, in this 3 years from now, it could be a completely different story if somehow you had access to everything EA had been putting out. You know, if suddenly you had, you know, let's say the Mass Effect trilogy gets ported to Xbox One and PS4, and that became part of the back catalog. That's
Right.
That would be pretty cool. I think where this could actually become interesting, still don't think it would be enough to get me over the edge, is that if it becomes platform agnostic. So if let's assume that Sony never allows it on their platform, but let's say it extends to the PC, which seems pretty likely that it would become part of Origin or something
Sure.
like that. Now, what if suddenly you had access to like dozens or hundreds of EA's archive, like Dungeon Keeper and Syndicate and all sorts of amazing games that EA has as a part of, you know, their long history. Wing Commander. You know, if EA Access for a couple dollars a month suddenly allowed you to play all that stuff, and you also got all these benefits on, I think it has to work like PlayStation Plus, in that it has to, you know, PlayStation Plus gets you benefits across PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, and Vita.
Yeah.
And that's part of why it's so strong, is that it's across these multiple platforms. And I think EA Access, if it has any chance of succeeding, it has to bring the PC into the equation.
It does. It definitely does. Yeah, the Xbox One alone is not going to do that, and you know, it's not like, you know, putting it on the Wii U at this point would do a whole lot for anyone. So the PC seems like the next logical step.
Yeah, and you know, even removed from that, I don't think publisher-centric subscription services are all that interesting. I think they're this, you know, there are only a couple of companies that can get away with this, and you know, this is something I outlined in a story earlier this week. Like, I think Nintendo and Sony might be the only companies with the kind of back catalog that can justify paying for exactly what that company has produced in the past.
Mm-hmm.
But even with Sony, that might be stretching it. You know, I think Nintendo is the only company with just such an enormous breadth of amazing games that you would want to pay for exclusive access to their library.
Yeah.
But you know, things like PlayStation Plus are what I'm looking for. I want expanded versions of that. You know, I want PlayStation Now. Like, Sony's making the experimental services that I think are interesting and going in the direction that I want. We're either never or a long ways from an actual Netflix-style service because of the technological fragmentation and platform fragmentation that occurs in video games that are unique to video games as opposed to other mediums. But in lieu of that, if you had platform-specific subscription services, that is interesting, and I think EA Access may just sort of, you know, be a blip on the road to that, or at least provide new ideas for what that could be. But you know, I don't want to sign up for a Konami subscription service. Like, and then what am I doing? I'm paying $5 for all these different ones. Like, Square Enix might be able to get away with it if suddenly you had access to, you know, all of their old RPGs like that.
Sure.
I guess that could be interesting to a segment of the population, but I don't know. That gets really weird really fast if suddenly we have 10 different companies offering 10 different subscription services. And maybe that's what Sony's trying to avoid, and that may be a worthwhile and you know, both plays in their favor because they have PlayStation Plus, whereas Microsoft doesn't have. They have Xbox Live, but you know, they're still sort of getting their feet wet in terms of providing those extra services that Sony's been doing for the past year or so.
Sure. You mentioned PlayStation Now. Did you see what the initial pricing looks like for that service?
It's not good.
No, it's not great.
It's expensive.
I mean, okay, so the breakdown is this: $2.99 for 4 hours, $5.99 for 7 days, $7.99 for 30 days, and $14.99 for 90 days. That is the current pricing. They are not. This is not necessarily the official launch pricing, but this is what they're experimenting with right now. I don't necessarily have a huge problem with those last three because those don't seem like exorbitant amounts of money for game rentals. That said, $2.99 for 4 hours. I don't understand how anyone looked at that and went, "That's a value that someone would want to pay."
I think where it gets tricky is on the end of the spectrum that you were talking about, where you're paying for 90 days and you're getting into paying like $20 or $30 for access to these games. That may not be, I guess, unreasonable. Like, you might get all you want out of whatever game you're renting in that 90-day period, but it's a little weird when you can go over to Amazon and then buy that game for the price of renting it for 90 days. And I think that's where PlayStation Now is going to continue to be in tricky territory, is how do they reconcile the fact that, in the retail market where price variability is a little more of a thing than it is digitally, and that games degrade over time in a way they don't as much digitally, at least on consoles. How do they reconcile the two? And they're also balancing it between publishers wanting to make sure that they charge a certain amount for games.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, $5.99 for 7 days is pretty much what I paid to rent games when I was a kid. Like when I went to Hollywood Video and I was looking to rent stuff. Like that's pretty much what they charge. So again, I don't think these prices are necessarily absurd. But like you said, yeah, there's variability in pricing. Games drop in price pretty precipitously on a regular basis. So keeping up with that in terms of where game prices are at any given time, I don't think that's possible, because that shit just changes on such a regular basis, and you can't just be constantly adjusting your pricing just because Amazon decides to drop the price or GameStop decides to drop this price, etc. So to me, this is valuable mostly for like newer games or more recent games that maybe haven't dropped in price. But again, like they have to create some kind of fixed price point in there, and this, other than that $2.99 for 4 hours one, which still just makes no goddamn sense to me. I'm sorry, I don't understand how that's not just like, here's 1 day, 24 hours, like that by itself, like that's a number. I don't understand how 4 hours is a rental period that you're even looking at.
Well, I can see, like, I don't know, like if you had friends over for the night and you wanted to play a party game, if you wanted to stream, Jack or something, then
I guess.
Yeah, I'm not saying there's a bunch of use cases for it, but I guess I can see a scenario where that would make sense. I think a subscription is really where this kind of hits.
Yeah.
I don't know how that would work, what kind of qualifications they would have on that. Maybe you could only, rent or play, 2 or 3 games at once. I don't know. But this PlayStation Now does not seem interesting to me at all until it's a la carte, paying a flat fee per month.
Right.
If it's like $6 a month, and then you get access to everything on the service with maybe some limitations. That's really the only interest I have in this, unless these prices start changing quite a bit.
Yeah, for sure.
I wouldn't be surprised if they introduce both a subscription price and then also PlayStation Plus members, because they've already said that they're going to be separate subscriptions, which I think is probably fair. I think they're offering quite a value with PlayStation Plus right now, and that PlayStation Now makes sense that it's kind of its own separate thing.
Sure.
But it would be nice if every month you got access to X amount on PlayStation Now as a way of encouraging you to use the service. Like, oh, hey, this month, you don't get PlayStation, you don't get, blah 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 game for free, but hey, you can stream it on PlayStation Now, blah 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 blah. So I wouldn't be surprised if they drag some folks in that way.
Totally.
But yeah, I don't know. They're the first ones doing this, and
they are.
While I think it's absolutely right to be critical of the pricing, to give them honest feedback about that angle of it, I'm really glad that PlayStation Now exists, because
For sure.
It's like this huge step in a very interesting direction for video games, and it doesn't have a lot of classic games or any classic games right now. They're just doing PS3, but a year from now, if PlayStation Now is a service where, if I could just download VibRibbon, although maybe that wouldn't work so well. Rhythm games maybe would be the worst sort of thing to stream over a service with the way American bandwidth works, but you get my point.
Also, expecting them to do anything with VidRibbon at this point is just a fool's errand because we know it's just there to tease us. So,
yeah,
motherfuckers. On a more positive note, or I don't know if this is actually a positive note, but it seems like it is. Michel Ancel has a new studio.
he does, but he's still staying at Ubisoft.
Yeah, that's the weird thing. So he started a new studio, which was called, I have it right here, Wild Sheep, which is a small team of, I think, like a dozen or so people. But he will be maintaining his employment at Ubisoft while running this thing. Someone who I cannot remember offhand mentioned on Twitter yesterday that, hey, remember when John Carmack was working at id and was also working for Oculus? We all saw how that turned out. I don't know if this is necessarily the same thing, but this does seem at the very least like a step toward maybe getting out the door at some point.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the read on that necessarily is. It certainly could be that. It could be, he said, I want to leave, and they said, what if you just sort of leave?
Yeah.
Like quasi leave. What exactly does that mean? I'm not sure. What does this mean for Beyond Good and Evil 2? Well, we get to keep talking about how it's not coming out again, I guess, as that game remains a perpetual mystery. But hey, I kind of liked the idea that he was making these terrific games and didn't have to worry about like where the money was coming from. But I guess also if that means he has to keep making Rayman games, not that I deeply love
those last two Rayman
Legends.
Games. Come on.
Do I really want a third one though? Maybe, sort of, but I'd also like to see him make something new. So I don't. There is a tension there between what Ubisoft wants him to make and what he actually wants to make. If this is where they settled, I guess that makes me happy. I just want him to keep making games. So
my guess is he'll focus his development creative efforts on whatever this new studio is going to be making, and he will go into Ubisoft and oversee and give feedback on projects that he is ostensibly in charge of, but probably just giving some creative feedback on more than anything else. That's usually that to me sounds like how they're probably going to make this work. I'm speculating entirely, but it would be very hard for me to believe that he was actually focusing all of his developer attention on two different things at the same time.
Yeah. So I guess we'll see. But
yep.
I'm glad he's still making games. So
whatever. He is a delightful pixie man, and I will support anything he wants to do.
That's true. I will play anything that. You know what? If Michel Ancel made a MOBA, I'd play it.
Rayman MOBA.
I wouldn't like it, but you know what? If Michel Ancel says I should play it, then I will play it. I will follow him.
I have my limits.
Oh, you try it though.
Mm.
Homefront acquired by Deep Silver.
Yeah.
As Crytek goes through some real nasty financial problems that are well documented by our friend Jason Schreier over at Kotaku. That is, I would recommend you just go look up his articles that he has written about Crytek, as they have had a lot of issues lately.
Yeah.
He has certainly been the reporter on the forefront of what's been going on at that studio. But basically, Crytek UK, which was making Homefront: The Revolution, it basically is just in shambles. A lot of the creative leads had left, and people hadn't been paid for a long time. And Jason's got a bunch of reporting on the problems there, and it was certainly creating a question mark over what the hell was going on with Homefront: The Revolution, a game that was just unveiled at E3 this year. Showed some promise, despite being a Homefront game.
Yeah.
But that's sort of neither here nor there. That's sort of separate from all this. And the conclusion, or at least the newest bullet point on this Crytek saga, is that Deep Silver, who is publishing Homefront: The Revolution, just set up, hey, we're gonna take this from you. We're gonna come on. So they bought Homefront: The Revolution and all the assets that are currently associated with that game in the midst of development, and they are starting a new studio, a Deep Silver, blah 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 blah.
It had a really good name.
Dam Buster Studio. Dam Buster.
It's a great name. I like it. I don't know what it, I mean. I assume
probably a city.
Busted dams. That's great, but whatever. That's a good name.
Yeah, not sure so far whether a bunch of Crytek UK people will end up there. That seems likely. but we don't know exactly how that's going to shake out yet. So
How weird is it that all this drama, and not just this, but even like going all the way back to like THQ, like tons of drama and like developer craziness has gone on around a fucking Homefront sequel of all games, of all the games to get passed around from studio to studio. Just like, is that thing just some sort of like disease-ridden plague? Like, is it just going from place to place and just ruining everything it touches? Like, is now that Deep Silver has taken back ownership of this, are they going to become infected? Is everything going to go horribly wrong there? Like, I think the only answer is just to kill that thing.
it's bad. Just Homefront. Press
Who wants another Homefront? Who are those people?
press X to hide in mass grave.
I
I beat that game.
did too. I reviewed it. It's not. I probably gave it too high of a score, honestly. I was probably too nice to it at the time.
It's one of those reviews you wish you could take back and beat a
The
little more into the
multiplayer was
ground.
fine. That sort of made me feel a little bit better about it. Like, the multiplayer wasn't bad. It's just that campaign was garbage.
It's not good.
No.
It's not good. Yeah, it's weird that. Like, I understood why Crytek acquired it from THQ. They were, they wanted to try and get into more original games, and they put a substantial amount of time into this Homefront sequel, and didn't want to give that up. Homefront, for better or worse, I think for worse, has some name recognition, and it sold 1 million copies. I think purely based on the fact that THQ did a shitload of marketing.
Yeah, they did.
It did not sell on the quality; it sold on the advertising and maybe its premise. But so I understand why Crytek took it over. Not really totally sure why they kept the name. I think they probably could have just come up with something else from there. But at least, I can see why a bean counter would go, "Hey, a name is better than no name." And yeah, I don't know. I mean, the game looked okay. I guess I don't know. Like the trailer I saw and what I've read about it seems like it could be okay.
Yeah, it could be all right. I don't know. I mean, it's not. There's something to be explored there with that series. I just don't think that sequel needs to exist. And for the amount of drama that game has caused, it definitely does not seem worth it all. But, what are you going to do? I mean, Crytek bought that from the THQ auction for not a lot of money. I mean, I guess a lot of money in the context of a company that apparently does not have a lot of money. But it was like $500,000 or something to buy that back.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. At that point, you might as well just spend the money.
Did they disclose how much Deep Silver paid to get it back from them?
No.
Okay.
No.
I'd be curious to know what they
might have
paid.
been just here's this turd. I don't know. Take
Yeah.
it.
Here's $10,000, and please God, just get it away from us.
Yeah. So I don't know. Crytek put out a statement. It was either this week or last week, saying that I don't know. They figured out their money situation, but they didn't address any of the reports about employees not being paid and sort of mass departures of creative staff. So not necessarily a reason to believe that company is in a great position. They may have, sutured up this one wound, but I don't think that means that the patient is healthy.
No, me either.
They are a company that placed a lot of weird random bets. Remember they kept saying like, oh, all of our games are going free to play, including Crisis. Like, what?
It definitely has seemed like, I mean, and some of this comes from just what Jason has reported on, but it does seem like a company that has not had a lot of really good direction for a while. And, there's a bit in the story where they talk about how they've just been chasing trends forever, and that has just led to some fairly ruinous decisions. And that, now look where they are. And it sounds like, that U.S. studio that they have is, if it's not closed yet, it all but will be at this point. The stuff going on in the UK, just everything about Crytek just sounds like a horrible mess right now.
Yeah, and I don't know how I feel about Deep Silver. They are really.
They're interesting, at least. I'll give them that.
Yeah. So they've got Homefront, which makes sense. I mean, that's one of their big marquee games. So I understand why they would want to have the continued vested interest in that. But the new Dead Island I don't think looks. I think it looked straight up bad when I saw it at E3, and it was very early, which they qualified a lot, but just nothing about it seemed. I don't know. It's the true Dead Island sequel seems to be coming. In that I can't even remember what that
Dying
game's called.
Light.
Dying Light. Although when I played that at E3, I was less than impressed. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
They're interesting company. Give me a new Saints Row.
Well, you're taking this weekend to catch up on Divinity and finish that off.
Yeah, I mean it's a game that you could easily spend 80 hours in if you want to do everything. I don't play games like that. I kind of dip my toes inside content, but more or less kind of stick to the path. So I can finish it in about 40, and I'm about 30 in. So
Okay.
I think I can try and finish that this
10
weekend.
more
But
hours.
yeah, I'm probably mostly focused on that because it's like this rare opportunity where my wife's gone, so I can just fully indulge and gorge on this game and kind of check it off my list. Although there's not really a whole lot coming out in August, is there? August?
There are a few things that are not sports games.
Yeah, I don't really play sports games, so that certainly takes a chunk out from that. Let's see, August, Sacred 3, Ultra Street Fighter 4, Ho-Ho-Come, Ho-Ho-Come, Ho-Ho-Come?
Oh, come! I've been looking forward to that one.
I am excited for that. Diablo 3 Ultimate Evil Edition. I never played Diablo 3, so maybe I do want to play that at some point. Maybe that'll be my opportunity. Maybe not. Infamous First Light. I never played Infamous. I played Infamous 1 and 2, but not the PS4 one. Metro Redux.
You should play it. It's not that long.
Professor Layton. Wasteland 2 is supposed to come out at some point in August.
Wow.
Actually, not a whole lot coming out in August.
I bet a couple of surprise indie things will pop up in there somewhere. But
That's
other than
probably
that,
true.
yeah.
I don't know. Maybe August will be my month to play Demon Souls.
Do it. Do it.
Maybe. Don't really have any interest in playing the Dark Souls 2 DLC, so maybe I'll do that. What are you gonna play this weekend?
Well, my girlfriend is out of town this weekend, so I am going to use that time wisely and have lots of fun playing The Last of Us Remastered. I've been wanting to check that out, so I'm going to try and play as much as I can this weekend. Also, finally going to catch up on stuff like finishing The Fall and get more into Gods Will Be Watching, which I have not really touched much at all. Just catching up on stuff. Since
I heard I got kind of scared off from the reaction to Gods Will Be Watching that the difficulty curve was gnarly.
That's fine. I'm still going to give it a shot. Like, even if I just jump into the easy mode, like, that's fine. I might just end up going that route, but I kind of want to see it through. I want to see what's going on. So
I've heard easy mode might be like there is no shame in playing that game on an easier difficulty. There was a reader that wrote in asking me if I was gonna play that, and I was like, I got kind of scared off by the difficulty. I haven't played it yet, but he was like, I played it on easy, had a great time, still felt like it was difficult. Got to see all the content in the game. So, this might be a situation where try it out normal. If you can do it, great, but maybe don't feel bad if you dial it back a bit.
Yeah, so that's kind of what my weekend's looking like.
Yeah, so I'm gonna sit and eat bad food and play a good video game. And drink some beers, so it's gonna be good. I'm excited about it. Yeah, I guess that'll kind of do it. Let me see if there's any outstanding questions in the chat. I didn't really see too much as we were going through the show. Video Game King, can we ever expect reviews of free-to-play games like Kim Kardashian, or is that just a madman's pipe dream? Ooh,
that is definitely a madman's pipe dream.
That's a madman. Yeah, I think in order to review it, I'd have to spend money on it. And although I probably could do that, I could expense a couple of dollars. I don't know. That's too far. I say no. I'm not going to say that there's never would be opportunity for a free-to-play game to get reviewed. Like, Brad didn't review Dota 2, did he? No.
Nope. I thought about reviewing Hearthstone, but then I didn't.
Hearthstone, Dota 2, those are games that I think we could have qualified for review. We didn't, but there's a parallel universe where we did. And yeah, okay.
All right.
I think that's
a show.
Guess we'll close with raise a glass to the fallen compatriots over at GameSpot. There were some unfortunate layoffs over there this week. This business is a harsh mistress, and games writing, games journalism, whatever you want to call it, is certainly in a state of constant change and turmoil. The GameSpot lost a lot of great folks this week that we certainly wish well and hope they are able to, and know they will, land on their feet. But when you are suddenly laid off, it is certainly a traumatic experience, especially being in a place like the Bay Area. But I'm sure all those folks will figure it out, and I'm excited to see where they land next. And I hope they can all stay in games writing because it's unfortunate when we lose more to the other side. But hey, you got to get paid. So
yeah, I mean, all those people who are gone now, they're all exceptionally talented writers and production people. I have no fear that they won't be able to find work, but it is a colossal bummer that we do not get to have them under our banner anymore, because those are all really good people, all of them.
Absolutely. So we wish them well, and have a beer on us this weekend for sure.
Yeah.
All you folks have earned it. Yeah. Oh, and also we will have Teddy Lee, one of the developers of Rogue Legacy, on the show on Monday. So look forward to that, and I will see you after the weekend, Alex.
Oh.